Hey, everybody. You're about to hear a brief retelling of the movie Premonition. Enjoy watching. Bridget and Megan, Jim and Linda's kids, reside in a lovely suburban American town. Although they have a lovely life together, Jim's frequent work travels have recently caused tension in the relationship. The phone rings one day, but Linda isn't there to answer it. Jim is the one sending the message. He is now on a different vacation. He tells Linda that he wants her to remember what he said the other night in front of the girls, but before he can say anything more, he has to hang off because he's getting another call. Unable to interpret the message, Linda phones Jim back. Before returning to her tasks, though, she receives the answering machine and begs Jim to call her back. On Prevent Mishaps, this also entails applying some stickers on the glass panes. After a while, Linda receives a visit from Sheriff Riley, who informs her of the tragic news: Jim passed away in a truck-related vehicle accident yesterday. Linda is in a state of shock and numbness since she just received his message on the phone, but Riley reassures her that it is genuine. Linda, in tears, makes her way through the house and then heads to the school to pick up her girls, holding off on telling them the news until they're safely home. After calling her best friend Annie for assistance a few hours later, Linda receives the same response from the answering machine as before. Joanne, Linda's mother, arrives at the house to assist her daughter with everything. Joanne stays in the guest room that evening, while Linda nods off while clutching a wedding photo on the couch. Linda wakes up in her bed the next morning, dressed differently. When she goes to check on her, Joanne is nowhere to be seen, leading her to believe that her mother relocated her. Linda walks downstairs after hearing some noises, and to her surprise, she discovers Jim calmly eating breakfast as normal. If this was all a dream, Linda feels a little uncomfortable because it seemed so genuine, but this is clearly better. Linda checks the answering machine after dropping the daughters off at school, but there are no messages on it. She nearly smashes another car while she gets preoccupied while heading to the grocery shop. When Sheriff Riley checks on her, he doesn't identify her and issues a warning. When Linda runs into Annie at the shop, she tells her that she didn't receive a message from her yesterday. Linda then returns home to continue doing her tasks. She begins by doing the laundry, and to her surprise, there are some items in there that she thought she had previously washed. She then unintentionally slips over a toy and falls into a dead crow in the garden while going to hang the laundry, becoming covered in blood. Linda quickly washes her hands and throws the crow in the garbage out of disgust. Later, Linda can't stop looking at Jim at supper and sleep because she doesn't think he's real. Linda wakes up in bed by herself the next morning, still wearing Jim's shirt. Numerous things that she finds further perplex her, such a glass of alcohol on her nightstand, blankets covering every mirror in the home, and a bottle of medication in the kitchen sink. Even worse, when she comes downstairs, she finds that Jim's burial is being handled by Joanne and Annie. When Linda tells her friends that Jim is still alive, nobody believes her, and she becomes extremely alarmed. She disregards their concerns and sets out to find their daughters. When Linda goes to see how the girls are doing in the garden, she is shocked to see that Bridget has scars all over her face, even though Megan still believes she is the most beautiful princess. When Linda responds that she didn't know because she wasn't present, Bridget questions how they could have known Jim was deceased at the time. Linda demands to be let to see the body when the funeral pulls up to the cemetery later. Because Jim was severely injured in the accident, the funeral directors are reluctant to open the casket, and Linda starts to argue with them because she has a right to see. When the staff members become agitated and unintentionally knock over the coffin, Jim's head rolls out and Linda sobs. After the coffin is lowered into the ground and the priest delivers a few words, Linda spots a woman observing the event from a distance. Linda runs to ask Joanne who it is, but Claire tells her that they already spoke yesterday and drives off, unconcerned with the fact that Linda claims she has never seen Claire before. Upon the family's arrival at home, Linda examines the medication container more closely and finds that Dr. Roth prescribed it. When Linda searches through the yellow pages for him, she finds that the page that corresponds to him has been torn off. Just as she is ready to give up, she turns to look away and sees that the missing page is in the garbage. When Linda calls Roth's office, it is closed for the day. The family gets an unusual visit in the evening. Dr. Roth is there with Riley to take Linda away since it is suspected that she intentionally injured Bridget. Linda doesn't know him. Joanne urges her daughter to tell her how Bridget received those shocks, but she is sobbing at the allegation since she can't recall. She is forcibly taken away by a group of nurses and placed in an ambulance. Shortly after, in the hospital, Linda finds herself strapped to a seat and hears Roth telling Riley that, when Linda visited him on Wednesday, she had already known her husband would not survive. Riley becomes certain that Jim's death was not a coincidence in light of this. After that, Roth injects Linda to death, disobeying her cries for forgiveness. Linda returns home to wake up the next morning. When Linda hears sounds coming from the bathroom, she quickly runs to Jim's back under the shower, not caring if she gets wet too. Linda names the girls her lovely princesses as they wake up and notices that the scars have disappeared. She finds the dead crow still there, decaying as though weeks had passed, and later detects an odd scent emanating from the dumpster. She hurries inside to find the page containing Roth's number because she is anxious, only to discover that it is still in the book. When Linda visits Roth a short while later, he doesn't recognize her. After she tells him about all the visions she's been seeing and he rules out any mental illness, Roth writes a prescription for the identical medication that Linda saw on her sink. She then visits Jim at work and queries him about why he doesn't spend more time at home. Jim has a meeting, so she wants to go out with him and the daughters and have a decent conversation with her husband. Claire arrives at that very moment, introduces herself to Linda as though she is a stranger, and drives Jim to the appointment. Linda finds out that Jim is unfaithful to her by witnessing them together. Linda chooses to dispose of the medication in the sink when she gets home. When a storm suddenly moves across the region, Linda begs her kids for assistance moving the laundry inside. Ignorantly running, Bridget crashes into the glass pane, breaking every bone in her body. Jim soon follows Linda in taking Bridget to the hospital, where he assures her that everything will be well. Bridget is cleared to return home in the evening. She is healthy but has several scars on her face. Linda tells her two girls they are gorgeous princesses and hides all the mirrors in the home so Bridget cannot see herself. Linda then visits Jim, who is having a rough time. When he questions Linda about why she didn't attach the stickers on the windows as she had promised, Linda responds that she believed she had. Jim claims she invited Joanne to stay for a few days to help Linda, but he doesn't trust her, hinting that Joanne has been acting strangely. Linda starts to cry and says she's a nice mother, but she gets no attention. After a while, Linda discovers the yellow sheet in her pocket and discards it. She becomes aware of the fact that she has been experiencing what she saw in those strange dreams, indicating that she has been seeing visions of the future and that she may make use of this knowledge to influence the present. Taking out a pen and paper, she makes a chronology of all she knows and concludes that Jim will pass away during her next business trip. This makes Jim disagree, pointing out that their relationship requires some separation, and Linda asks him not to go on that trip. Joanne is still around the home when Linda wakes up the next morning on the couch. After discovering Claire is yet another contradictory point Linda wants to address, she locates the timeline she created and adds more details. Linda visits Claire after dropping the girls off with Joanne and finds out that she was seeing Jim. She then visits Annie to express her frustration with the entire situation and to consider whether the tragedy was fortunate as Jim's affair may have ruined the family. A few hours later, Linda visits the bank to make sure everything has been paid for, including her girls' schooling and the mortgage. Jim has also given her an annuity. She is surprised to learn that the banker brought Jim in before he departed on the trip, expressing a great deal of nervousness and wanted to make sure his family would be okay without him. After that, Linda finds some calm by gazing at the neighborhood lake. A man who lives there informs her that this is the ideal area to relocate to when one has to start again. She then heads to the funeral home to finalize the plans for Jim. Linda takes Jim's shirt and some wine to bed in the evening. Linda asks Joanne whether she thinks that letting Jim die is the same as killing him, but Joanne doesn't know what she means. Jim wakes up with Linda the following morning, and she urges him to go to the park and spend the day with the girls. She shares her predicament with Father Kennedy in the interim. Kennedy fills her in on the numerous historical instances of unexplained occurrences and how, because they originated from desperate and lost faith individuals, they were viewed as dangers of the faithless. Kennedy believes that Linda has to focus on her priorities and fight for what she truly wants out of life, but Linda is unsure of her goals. Linda then proceeds to mile 220, the location of Jim's anticipated accident. She is so distracted by the images she's been seeing that she misses an approaching automobile, but fortunately she moves aside in time. As the girls are ready to go to bed in the evening, Linda insists Jim tell them he loves them. Jim declares that his wife and daughters are his greatest loves in the world. After that, Linda walks outside to get some fresh air, and Jim follows to see how she's doing. This leads to a fight. Jim is certain he's providing for the family and doesn't understand Linda's desire for things to return to the way they were. Suddenly, a power line is struck by lightning, killing the bird that Linda would discover later in the timeline. After the pair dashes back inside, Linda apologizes to Jim for her actions, and the two start acting lustfully. After they're through, Linda admits she had a dream about Jim dying, but Jim assures her it was only a dream and everything would be well. When Linda wakes up the following morning and doesn't see Jim, she becomes terrified. After confirming her timing with Annie over the phone, she discovers a message from Jim stating that he is dropping the girls off at school before departing on his vacation. Linda leaves the house while phoning Jim to stop him, but Jim is too preoccupied to answer the phone. He has to go to the bank to make arrangements for his family, then he has to deal with the girls. Jim can't get the conversation he had with Linda last night out of his mind, so as he gets in his car to drive away, he decides to phone Claire and break up with her. After that, he rings the home phone and leaves the message Linda heard on the answering machine at the start of the tale. He hangs up when a call comes in, and it's Linda herself, calling from her car because she's trying to stop him by following him on the road. Jim is about to reveal the affair when Linda says she already knows and doesn't care. Linda apologizes for everything and makes a commitment that they would work on their relationship more and start again from the beginning. Jim stops to wait for Linda after spotting her in the rearview mirror at that precise time. As Linda prepares for a reunion, she becomes extremely alarmed upon realizing that they are at the scene of the accident, mile 220. Jim responds to her desperate request to turn the car around, and just as he does, a car approaches from the other direction. Luckily, Jim is able to dodge it in time. Although Linda is relieved that her husband is okay, it appears that she overlooked Riley's statement that the collision was caused by a vehicle. Jim tries to start the car again so he can get off the road, but the engine won't start. Suddenly, the notorious truck appears and smashes into Jim's car. When Linda finally realizes that there is nothing she can do to alter the situation, she loses it and goes to check on him. However, before she can get any closer, both trucks explode. Many months later, when the moving trucks come to pick them up, the sisters stir Linda up from her slumber. Linda feels relieved that Bridget's scars have mostly healed and recalls Kennedy advising her to stand up for what really counts. Right now, Linda's tummy is the most important thing because of her pregnancy, which resulted from their final night together.